Everyone has a unique gift, and Mike, the creator of the One Life podcast, believes most people don't know how to use their gifts or what they are. Mike wants you to see things from a different perspective and be true to yourself. The One Life podcast unites the world through art, fashion, music, and film. It inspires, motivates, and creates positive energy, love, and compassion to all communities and creates an equal playing field for all. On the One Life podcast, they cover topics like building relationships, overcoming adversity, habits of healthy people, and much, much more. We only have one life to live. Be yourself and live your truth. Add the One Life podcast to your playlist. That's the number one, NE Life. Available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and your favorite podcast platform.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the One Life podcast. I am Mike MIC Reed. And today we're going to be talking about positive psychology and well-being and telling your story because everybody has an amazing story. In studio today, we have Rosie and Princess from Action for Kids.
Thank
Is
you.
it Action for Kids Child Abuse Prevention?
Child Abuse Prevention Council.
Council. Okay, that's the full name?
Yes, Action for Kids Council for Prevention of Child Abuse.
All right. How are you ladies doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing amazing. I can't wait for this conversation because I have a lot of questions. I'm just playing, I don't. But I do want to talk to you ladies about it, especially you, Rosie, because you took the first cohort in positive psychology class. So I kind of want to know your story because I heard you had an amazing story.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is interesting. So let's start with your story.
Oh, my
Because this show is all about your story. So
Alrighty.
let's start with your story.
Well, my story is I was born in the city in Guadalajara, Mexico, and I got to have my mom and dad until I was 8. That's when my father died, and then I lost them both because, as you know, you cannot have your mom stay at home with you or continue to stay at home with you. So she went out to earn a living, and myself and my brothers and sisters ended up with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and my aunts. And so I was still going to school. I was in 3rd grade when that happened, and there was a lot of boys there that were, I call it sexual harassment. Let's call it what it is. They kept on saying nasty comments and talking about sex, which I didn't know what the heck that meant, but I knew body parts, so I knew it wasn't very nice, and I told my mother, and she pulled me out of school, and she started taking me to work with her, and she would drop me off at the school, and then she would go back to her job. So she put me in a school next to where she worked, and it wasn't a very good place for her to work either. I mean, she was working with professionals, architects, attorneys, all these professionals, but she was the chef for all of them. And when she was carrying the trays to deliver them to their offices at the lunch hour, she overheard them making bets as to who was going to get into her pants first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So later on, when I was old enough for her to share all this information with me, I found out that pretty much everywhere she went to work, it was the same thing. You want your money, you have to put out.
All right.
Right? And so she decided that she didn't want that kind of life, not for her and not for me, and not for my brothers and my sister. So she came to the United States with an offer of taking care of an elderly woman who was very ill. And so she came up here and she became a victim of human trafficking. She was doing all the cooking and the cleaning and taking care of the elderly lady, and she wasn't getting paid, and she was being, what is it called? Intimidated about her wanting to leave. And so she left us behind with my grandma and my aunts. And then after quite a while, she sent for us because she said she was ready. But I think that she just missed us because she was so not ready. She was living with another woman in her house. And imagine bringing 4 children to another household where there's already children. There's a lot of discontent. So we ended up living in our car with my mom, and that's where we would sleep. And so we were homeless for, I don't know, a few months until a gentleman that she knew and worked with in catering trucks told her that there was a place at an apartment building for low-income families, and that's where we went to live after that. And so things got better after we were living on our own. Not much better, because she was always trying to work and, bring more money into the household. And so she started working Saturdays, which meant that we were unsupervised, and us being as rambunctious and exploring as we always were, we would always cause problems in those apartment buildings. And she just decided, you know what, it's so not worth it working on Saturdays, because the money that I make on Saturday, I have to pay for broken windows and stuff like that. And she says, so it's so not worth it. I'm just not going to do that anymore. And so, yeah. And from there was, we just kept moving every year. And so we were bouncing from one place to another place to another place. Once I decided that I was going to get married with the man that my mom brought home. She was working in the catering trucks, and we met this young man because she would take me to work with her. And this young man was very disheartened about women, and he was talking mad stuff about women. And I overheard him. And then he said, oh, women are beeps, and, And so I poked my head out that catering truck, and I said, excuse me, we're not all like that. So then after he was like backpedaling and saying he was really sorry, young man. Mm-hmm. And then one day my mom says, hey, do you remember that guy? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that guy. Well, he said hello, she says. I said, well, say hello back, So then one day she brought him home, and she stayed in the vehicle that he drove her home in. And so she stayed there because she saw me walking home from school. And she stayed in the vehicle until I got there, and then he asked me out. So there goes that. So we got to, meet each other, go out for ice cream, and then many years later, we got married and had a family, 2 boys, 2 girls. And I went to a meeting of the Council for Prevention of Child Abuse, and that got started in 1998. And I felt like this is where I needed to be. And I know we talk about spirituality and believing in a higher power, and I always have. And I always felt like he's always with me, and he's always protecting me, whoever he is, the person that protects us. And it was just, I started learning that there were things that were not quite right at that moment. And so once we found out that we needed to file paperwork with the state and county that hadn't been done yet, for whatever reason, maybe the person that was running it before didn't know that needed to happen. So we kind of like took it over. And ever since then, we've been running it and doing the best that we can in the community.
So I want to go back a little bit, because that is a very interesting story. You said you and your now husband, correct? Went to a meeting about child abuse.
I did.
Did you know at that moment that was something you wanted to get into, or was it something from previous and all your past experience as a child?
I didn't know that what I had gone through was called child abuse. Mm-hmm. In Mexico, it's just life. Right. It's what you go through. So once I found out that, that's not the right thing to do, that's not the way you should be treated, that's not the way that things are supposed to be, and this is how you can fix it, then I'm like, oh, well, I want to fix it too, because I read a lot of books on how to raise children when I got pregnant with my first child, because I felt in my gut that the way that I was raised was not the right way to raise children, right? my mom loved us a lot, but every time that she would come home from working those hard hours, people would tell my mom, you need to spank them because they misbehaved. They did this, that, and the other, right? And so my mom would grab the nearest thing that was close by and just whack us 3 times with it because that's what she was taught, that, you know, that you smack your kids, whatever. If it was a wire hanger or the cable from the iron, you know, that was left out, or even the cord from the washer. And so I just felt like, no, I don't think we're supposed to be beat like that. That hurts, you know, that shouldn't happen. And so once I found out that, yeah, that was right, that's not the way you treat children, then I decided, well, you know, I can be a part of the solution. And it felt right that this was what I needed to do.
Okay. And when did Action for Kids start?
In 1998.
Okay.
Yeah. And I started with them in 2016.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
So is Action for Kids your foundation, or?
Actually, Action for Kids is a mandate by the state of California.
Okay.
So the state of California noticed back in 1973 to 75 that there was a lot of child abuse going on and child deaths, etc. And so they decided, they made a mandate that every county had to have a child abuse prevention council, or called a CAPC. And so each county has councils. LA County happens to have 12 councils. First, it started off as 1 per spa, service planning area, and there's 8 service planning areas in Los Angeles County. But then they made specific to deal with specific problems, like the Asian Pacific Islander one, and then there's another one that deals with deaf and hard of hearing, and another one that's specific for African American. So those 3 are separate, and they deal with that kind of thing. And then there's another one that brings all the top players together, and that one's called ICAN. Well, that's the acronym ICAN. Interagency Child Abuse and Neglect Council. And they bring in the heads of LAUSD, what's his name? The district attorney, the sheriff, the highway patrol, like all the responders, including the people from the Department of Children and Family Services. So they bring in all the big players, and including heads of hospital and I'm not going to say, it's not morgue. What is it? Yeah, it is the morgue. You know, the people that deal with doing the autopsies on the children to find out what they died of. So they bring all these top people together, and they meet and they come up with ways that they can create changes and do better for our community, so that way they can implement new laws or new rules, things that we can do, new programs. So, yeah, but there's 12 councils.
Okay. So before I go on with you and your story and more on Action for Kids, Princess, how you doing?
I'm good.
How did you get involved? And how long have you been with the organization?
So I got involved back in 2018, I believe. And I actually met Rosie because I'm a graphic designer.
Okay.
And she came in looking for a logo. Back then it was called a firm. And so I helped her with the logo, and she told me a little bit about what they do. And I told her that I wanted to be involved. And so she was very gracious. She welcomed me onto her council, and I started volunteering. And then I took a little bit of a break. I started commuting and working out of town. And then just recently I was able to come back, and so now I'm back with the council.
So why do they call you a super volunteer?
I don't know.
Is that like a real
so
title?
I just try to help them when I can.
You must be pretty amazing then.
I just started again. Like I said, I did take a little bit of a break. So I do feel bad getting that title, but
yeah, but she jumped in with both feet, like I'm back, and she's just helping out in everything that she can, like getting her hands all the way in there, So it's great. It's great to have you back.
Is it? But do you have like a backstory to it? Why child abuse, or is it just something?
So I always wanted to do something with social work. I think for me it was still a little bit of confusion as to where exactly I wanted to go. I do have my own history with child abuse. My mom was unfortunately a single mom. She had to work a night shift and 2 jobs. And so I had to be babysat, and I didn't have the best babysitters. And so kind of similar to Rosie, it wasn't until I was older that I realized certain things shouldn't have happened, that they weren't okay. And it was through that I started looking a lot into psychology and just trying to understand everything. And slowly I started learning about cases that really struck a chord with me, one of those being like the Gabriel Fernandez case.
Right.
And so Rosie just happened to come along like at that perfect time where I was like, I know I want to do something. I just don't even know how to get started or where. And here comes Rosie, and she's like, hi, I have this counsel, and it just happened to work out at the right time.
Right. I love that. So let me ask you a question. As far as like child abuse, because I know, especially out here in the AV, is pretty high. Do parents even know that they're doing a lot of damage, or do you think that they think that what they're doing is okay?
To be honest, I think that we were raised in a certain way, and we just keep on going with that same pattern.
Right.
And just like how I said that I didn't feel like that was the right way, and I grabbed some books and I started reading about parenting, not everybody does that. They think that, well, I turned out okay. Look, I'm still here. But they don't realize that they're broken. They have like little cracks everywhere. And so they don't realize that that affected them. Maybe they could have been, I don't know. I'm just going to put it like a professor in a university teaching people about altruism or whatever. But because of that trauma that they went through, because of the inflicted pain through punishment that they received from their parent, that held them back, right? Like maybe, it's like they were always being told, don't be going onto that rock and jumping off. You're going to hurt yourself. And if you do, I'm going to beat you afterwards. Right. So that kid never jumped off that rock. And look at all the kids that are doing parkour, right?
Right.
Would anybody have ever tried that if their parents were always telling them, oh, no, you're going to fall down and I'll beat you afterwards? They wouldn't have tried it.
Great example. That is actually a great example. And I asked that because I actually went through a situation with my daughter. She's 22 now. But when she was 15, one day, I used to, this is right after me and my wife got a divorce. I used to pick my son and my daughter up every Sunday, and we have Sunday fun days, whatever. And one day she just wouldn't come with me. I found her, I went to the house and went inside, and my son was ready, but my daughter was hiding in the closet. And I didn't know why. I was like, why are you hiding in the closet? She was like, I don't know. And I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. I was like, are you coming out? And she came out, but then she said on her mom, because she was in her mom's closet. Then she said, and her mom wasn't there at the time. So then she was like, she just didn't want to go. She didn't give me no real excuse. She said she just didn't feel well. She didn't want to go. And I said, okay, fine. Next week, came back, and her mom was like, yeah, she don't want to go. And her mom was telling me that, she was asking me, like, hey, like, what's wrong with her? And I was like, I don't know. I was going to ask you, like, what's wrong with her? Like, all of a sudden she don't want to go. She wasn't talking to me. She wasn't really talking to her mom. So we started thinking the worst. Like, we was like, did something happen at school? Did someone touch her? We start thinking the worst. We start thinking, family members, because 9 times out of 10, it's always like a family member, right? Yeah. So we start asking like the hard questions. And, it's my daughter, my only daughter. So I had to ask the hard questions. I know she hung out with my brother a lot because, I have nieces. So, we just started asking questions. And she just wouldn't respond to us. So finally, my ex-wife, she was like, well, I'm just going to take her to therapy. So finally, I think after like maybe 2 months, she finally took her to therapy, and she talked to a therapist. And the crazy thing about it was, so my son has cerebral palsy. So every few years, they always had to like break because his legs were scissored. And so they had to like break his legs and twist them, and he had to like go through therapy. Like I think it was like every 3-4 years, and learn how to walk again. So the therapist finally told us that she was afraid of me, and I was like it didn't make sense to me. Like, why is she afraid of me? And it makes sense to me now, but back then, like, it was just so mind blowing, because my daughter was a straight A student, never got in trouble. I never yelled at my daughter, touched my daughter, hit her, never had to raise my voice, not one bit. And me and my daughter was very close, because I was always an entrepreneur, so I worked at home, and my wife at the time, she was always at work, so I kind of raised the kids at home by myself. Nice. So we had a great relationship. So when they said that, like, it didn't make sense. But so come to find out, 10 years prior, 10 years when she was 5, because that's what she said. She was like, oh yeah, 10 years ago, my dad was yelling at my brother, and it scared her. So 10 years later, something triggered her, and it was a trauma from 10 years prior. So what happened was, my son, after his first surgery, he had to learn how to walk. So we went to therapy 3 days a week, and, you know, he got to a level to where he didn't need his canes or walker no more. The second time, and this is when it all happened, you know, he didn't want to do it. So me just being a guy dad, you know how dads and son, they argue about, you know, exercising, and it's like that tough love, like, come on, you can do it, you can do it, like, get up, no, don't stop, like, you know what I'm saying, it's being tough and rough. That's what I was doing to him. But my daughter was in the room because I was taking care of both of them while the mom was at work. Apparently, all that yelling at him traumatized her.
Oh, boy.
Right. And so I was like, so my point to all that was, when I learned that, I had to rethink on how I behave in front of my kids now.
Yes.
Because I didn't know something that I did to one person was going to affect the other person. Like, it's still crazy to me to even think that, but
that's
like,
called, that has a name. It's called vicarious trauma.
Vicarious?
Vicarious.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that. It's still crazy to me, but I get it. I understand it. So now, like, whenever I'm around my kids, like, I'm mindful of what I do. Even if someone pisses me off or whatever, I'm mindful of what I do in front of my kids now.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that our valley has, is that we are all suffering through vicarious trauma. Princess brought up the Gabriel Fernandez case, but that's not the only one, as we all know. Yeah. And so every time that this is publicized, right, that this person got killed, and this child got killed, and this other child got killed. I was pulled into a meeting recently, and I researched so I could be ready for this meeting. And it turns out that I was so not ready, because it was about a case that I didn't even know about. And so there's all these child murders that are happening in our community. How can that not affect us? Right? So we are all having vicarious trauma. And the only way that we can learn how to deal with our vicarious trauma is by maybe taking a class on trauma-informed care. You know, so that way you treat others like if they've gone through trauma. Because I'm telling you right now, each and every one of us has that in our genes, you know, in our genetic system. And so they say that when you go through trauma, it just kind of builds a marker in your genes, and then you pass that on to your children. So that the way that we behave, like, for example, if someone was always told to be quiet when your dad gets home from work, right? Because he wants quiet time. So if that child was always told to be quiet, then he's going to pass that on to his generation, and then that generation to the next generation, right? So it's like our friend Lisa calls it generational baggage.
Right. No, it's true.
So we keep on passing it forward and forward. And so we need to try to break that chain and start doing better with our parenting, and start doing better with our attitude, start doing better with the way that we talk to people, and showing patience and kindness, right? It's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. You just have to, like, always be on check with your emotions, right? Don't let them get the best of you.
Right.
And then give grace to people, because, for example, somebody could be at the market misbehaving, acting out, all that kind of stuff, and you can be the person that goes and says, I noticed that you're not doing so well right now. Is there anything that I can do for you? Or you can be the person that goes up there and says, hey man, cut it out. Why don't you get out of the store? Whatever. You know, so it depends on how you approach people. Sometimes they're just having a hard time.
Right.
So it's important for us to be kind.
Right. And even with the situation with my daughter, like it took me a year to not talk to my life. Like she wouldn't talk to me for a year. Oh, and that was the worst time of my life, because I was learning about all this. And I still went to their house every Sunday to pick up my son, because he kept coming with me. But I would go there, and some days she would be like on a couch, and I'll walk in and be like, you know, hey, Kira, how you doing? Some days she'll speak, some days she wouldn't. Some days she'd know I'm on my way, so she wouldn't even be downstairs. Okay. You know, it was just crazy. So, but I had to give her that space. Like I didn't force it. I didn't say, you're gonna talk to me like, you know, I'm your dad. You better listen to me. Because that's what my dad did to me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, like how you said, I didn't want to continue the cycle. So I immediately, when I first found out about it, I immediately said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do what my dad did to me. Because my dad and his mom raised me, because my mother passed away at a young age. Mm-hmm. And me and my dad didn't have a relationship because of how he treated me. And I had promised myself at a young age, if I ever had kids, I would not treat my kids the way he treated me. And so when that happened, like I was devastated at first, because I was like, dang, I'm about to repeat this cycle. Yeah. And so it was hard for me not to talk to my daughter, because we had a close relationship. And to this day, you know, I call it a love-hate relationship. Mm-hmm. Like some days she loves me and I can go over there. Some days she don't want to talk to me. So it's like I still think she's dealing with it. Yeah. But she does know that she can call me at any time, and I'm always going to be there for her. But I'm just letting her deal with it at her pace. You know, and it's rough and it's hard, but, you know.
It takes time.
It does. It takes time. Because I understand, like, it's not something that, you know, obviously, you know, one setting of a therapist or whatever, yeah, she has to deal with it on her time.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was going to say that's something I hear a lot from parents, is that kind of like going back to what Rosie said about how she didn't realize that it was child abuse. It was just living in Mexico.
Right.
And that's also something I hear often, that, you know, abuse gets repeated because people just assume that that's normal, that it's okay. And then I think parents grow up and then they're like, well, I was treated this way, so as long as I don't treat my kids that way, then it's no longer child abuse. But sometimes you have to really kind of understand that maybe just because it looks different than how you were treated, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're still out of that realm.
Right.
I hear that, unfortunately, a lot of in our own culture, where they're like, well, my parents, I've heard this actually, unfortunately, that their parents used to hang them upside down, burn leaves under them, and then have the smoke, like, burn their face, burn their eyes. And they're like, well, I don't do that to my kids. I just smack them around. And I'm like, that's not okay still. Right. And in their eyes, it's like, well, I didn't do X, Y, Z to them, so therefore it's okay. But maybe that would have been better treatment for you. But one, it's still child abuse. And two, you have to kind of see what your child needs, not what you needed. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes those lines get a little bit confused.
Right.
Absolutely. And we need to think about, I always say that nobody asks their child, we just say, let's have a child, right? But we don't ask the child if they want to come and be part of our family. Like we don't think about that part, right? And so I feel like we should treat that child with extra special care because we didn't even ask their permission.
Hey, you know what's funny about that is my daughter teases us all the time when she was younger. That's one thing she would always used to say. She'd be like, I didn't ask to be here. So, because I would always say why she couldn't do something or why she had to do something. And she'd be like, well, I didn't ask to be here, so you have to do this. And then I used to tell her, well, at 18, I don't have to do it. And she's like, yes, you do. You have to do it as long as I'm living because, again, I didn't ask to be here. So you have to take care of me as long as I'm here.
Oh, well,
like,
yeah.
It is true, though, right? I didn't ask to be here. That's funny.
They didn't.
That's true, though.
Yeah, didn't ask.
Yeah.
People just have babies, and some people just have babies because they're going to get a paycheck out of it.
Right. Oh, that's the worst.
Those are the worst. Yeah. I've seen some people that treat their children absolutely horrendously. Call them names under the sun, and they're so worthless and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can your words can uplift a child and give them that confidence to go out and be the best that they can be. Or your words can crush a child and mess them up, have anxiety disorder, have, depression, all that kind of stuff because of your words.
Right.
So it's very important that we choose our words wisely, to bite our tongue. And I don't mean literally bite your tongue, but like if you know that you're in a place where you're like, how do you call it, like really triggered or like you're really angry, right? You know it. You know when you're angry. So if you know that you're in that spot, in that place, you say to the person that you're having that conflict with, one moment, I need a moment. Please excuse me. We'll pick it up later.
Right.
And walk away. It doesn't cost anything to walk away.
Right.
Walk away, splash some cold water on your face, go for a walk around the block, do whatever it takes for you to like calm back down and come back to your executive function. Right? We always talk about like the frontal part of our brain is the executive function. But then we flip our lid, right? And that's why people say, oh, he flipped his lid. And that's what we mean by that. It's like your executive function is no longer intact, no longer working properly because you flipped your lid, and now you're letting your lizard brain come out and just, do harm.
Right.
So we don't want to do harm.
Right, and one of the things that I try to tell other parents, and I say this a lot on the show, like when I grew up, parents used to always tell kids, don't speak until spoken to. But yet they're never spoken to, and that's why a lot of kids don't speak up nowadays. Kind of like the example how you said about jumping off a rock, right? If you constantly tell kids, hey, don't speak until you're spoken to, but if you never speak to them, then as they grow up, and that's why a lot of adults now don't even speak up, because they was always taught not to speak, and they're afraid to talk. But I've always taught my kids to speak up. Said no matter what it is, you can always tell me. I might be mad. Might get upset, but I will never hurt you or punish you for telling me the truth. So tell me whatever. And me and my ex-wife, we taught our kids that.
That's important.
Because that's that. I mean, I just think that's just a horrible thing. I see parents all the time telling their kids to be quiet, don't talk. Grown-ups are talking. It's like, don't do that, because they're going to grow up not saying anything. And if something happens and then you go to them like what happened, they're not going to talk.
Yeah.
Like, that's just horrible.
And the thing is that kids learn from what we do, right? From our examples.
Yes.
So if we're always fighting, then they're going to learn to fight.
Yep.
If we fight with our hands, then they're going to learn to fight with their hands too. So when next thing you know, you're getting a phone call from principal at school saying, hey, your child just got into a fight. And then you're going, oh my gosh, why would they do that? It's like, because they learned it from you, or from watching TV that you let them watch. So it's important for you to monitor everything that goes on in their lives, so that way you know where it's coming from. Yeah. When I was much, much younger, and I had tons of energy and all that kind of good stuff, not that I don't now, but I had a lot more energy. Anyway, I had a daycare center, so that way I can stay home and be with my kids and still bring in a little bit of money into the household. And trust me, it was a little bit of money because I was charging like $60 a week. I was just doing it just for funsies, just for the kids, my kids, to have somebody to play with. And then I watched my P's and Q's, never used a bad word. And then one day, my son, he was like, how old was he? I think he was 3 or 4. And then he said, I got you, you bastard. And I'm like, oh my God, where did he get that word, right? I was like mortified. And so you have to put on your happy parent face, of course. You can't just like freak out. So I like, honey, come here, sweetie. I want to ask you a question. And then he says, yes, Mom. And he's all happy, because he's playing with his friend. And so I said, where did you get that word? Where did you hear that word? And then he says, oh, from Bruce Willis on that movie last night. And I'm like, oh, man. He should not have been watching that rated R movie.
Right.
Yeah, so it's important for us to monitor. My youngest daughter, she was watching the Land Before Time movies, and she started acting like the Triceratops, being standoffish, bossy, that kind of attitude. And I'm like, where does she get that from? I'm not like that. So then I after watching it with her, I'm like, okay. So I told my mom, I said, hey, guess what? We're not going to let my daughter watch Land Before Time anymore. Let's play something else. And next thing you know, we ended up turning off TV altogether for a few years, because I just figured, you know what? If they're going to learn bad words, they'll learn them from me. And whatever comes out of their mouths, I'll know that I taught them.
Right.
And it's important for you to keep an eye on that kind of thing.
And that's what me and my ex-wife, we did with our kids. Like, especially with like drinking. Like, it's funny, my son won't drink alcohol to the day, and he's 26. Because we said, if you're gonna drink, you're gonna drink with us first. And we gave them both. I forgot what age he was at, but I think he was maybe 18 or 19. And we gave him some alcohol, like a sip of it. And he to the day he won't drink alcohol.
It doesn't taste good.
Right. My daughter, on the other hand, she drinks. But yeah, I mean, we taught them that because we always believed in leading by example, right?
Yeah.
Even with the talking, like, when parents tell kids not to talk, right? Well, we always say, we express ourselves to our kids, right? Because all parents want their kids to talk and express themselves. But if you're not expressing yourself to them, again, like what you just said, why would they do it to you? You got to lead by example, even with your kids. Parents think because of their parents, they don't think that way, but you have to. You have to express yourself to them as well, and be open and honest about certain things.
Definitely. And that's another thing, that if you always tell them, like, princess, you need to be honest with me all the time, because that way, if somebody says something about you and you told me that didn't happen, then I can trust that didn't happen, and I will defend you.
Right.
Teeth and nails, as they say. I will defend you because you've always been honest with me. And if you tell me that, no, that wasn't you didn't do it, then I will trust that you didn't. And we told that to our kids too, right?
Right.
And yeah, one time it happened that principal's calling the house, and you need to come over to the principal's office because we caught your daughter looking up words in the dictionary. So I went to the classroom. It was a conference with the teacher, my daughter, her friend, and the principal. And so I said, so what happened? And she goes, well, your daughter was looking up the word penis. And then I said, oh, okay. Mind you, I'm a nurse. So I told her, if there's a word that you don't understand, pick up the dictionary, look it up. Don't find out stuff from other people because you don't know if they're going to tell you the right thing.
Right.
So, and I told them, I said, well, I told her to look up words that she doesn't understand. He goes, yeah, but it was in the classroom. Then I said, okay, daughter, were you done with your work, or were you doing that during class time? And he says, well, I was finished with everything I had to do, so I just picked up the dictionary, and I heard somebody said the word, and so I looked it up because I wanted to know what it meant. And then I said, well, I'm sorry, I cannot punish her for the directive that I gave her. And I said, and if she was done with her schoolwork, then you can't punish her either for looking up words in the dictionary, no matter what they are. Right. It's a body part. Why are you ashamed of her looking up the word penis? And while we're on this topic, you know how we're always talking about naming everything what it's called.
Right.
Yep.
You know, these are our eyes, that's my nose. And we always start ever since they're little, right? Well, I've got your nose, you know, or peekaboo, I see you know, see you with my eyes. So everything should be called what it's called. You know, this is your penis, this is your buttocks, and this is your vulva, right? So we shouldn't change the name because that's how kids get, I'm going to say the word, that's how kids get raped because they don't know the right words.
Right.
There's this one story about this little girl and her mom moved in with the uncle, and the mom was very grateful because the uncle said, if you have to go to work, I will be happy to be the babysitter. And so she thought, oh, okay, sure, great. Well, the uncle was, they say molesting, but he was, you know, raping the little girl, and he called her private area treasure. So her mom came up to, the little girl came up to her mom and told her, Mom, I don't want to share my treasure with Uncle so-and-so. And her mom got mad at her. Your uncle has been so kind to us. He's always been so good and so nice to us. How would you not share your treasure? How dare you? So that could have been averted if they'd used the right proper terminology, right? The worst part is that this little girl was very little. And so when she got to be the age of 8, she ran away from home. And when she ran away from home, she ended up in McDonald's. And at McDonald's, she met a very nice man who said, you can come stay with me. I'll protect you. I'll take care of you. I'll be good to you. And for 3 months, he was. Very nice, very kind, very gentle. And then after those 3 months were up, he took her to meet the rest of his girls and put her into the life.
Yeah, he groomed her.
At the age of 8, right? So is it the mom's fault? I think it's society's fault. I think it's society's fault for being so closed-minded about sexuality.
Right.
You know, it's like, why aren't kids supposed to know about that this happens? I was thinking about it on the way here, that how can we talk to our young people and let them know that making love is a beautiful thing if it's done right, right? It should be with someone that you very much care about, someone you love, and use proper words, be kind to one another. It's a beautiful thing, but nobody should be taking it from you without your permission.
Right.
You know, so just wanted to put that out there. Use proper terminology. Ever since your babies are born, call their body parts what they're called. There's no shame in that. It's just a body part.
Right. No, I 100% agree with that. Kids at a young age should know more about their body parts and what they're supposed to be used for. You know, like you said, like love making is a good thing, but it's not a good thing for your uncle to be touching you.
Right.
Like they should be talking about this. But like you said, society teaches us, oh no, they're too young. They shouldn't talk about this and talk about that. It's like, no, they need to, so they're aware.
Yeah, because then they take advantage of that
Yeah.
situation.
Yes, I was gonna say that's like a grooming tactic.
Yeah, it is. It's a grooming. Like I said earlier, the guy at McDonald's parking lot, he groomed her for 3 months, showed her how to do all these things, you know, and that's what they normally do. Predators, they groom you for months and it gets you all comfortable, and then the next thing you know, you're sold or you're working for them.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's why it all should be talked about. So, question: why action for kids is so important in our AV community?
Do you want me to answer that one, or?
I mean, I can start. I think it's important because it offers, one, a safe place for people to talk about these types of topics. We've discussed before in our meetings how there's a stigma around speaking about child abuse prevention. People just don't want to talk about it. It's too dark. It's too heavy. And so they avoid it. And I think having councils like this kind of, one, start the conversation and provide a safe place for other like-minded individuals in the community that also feel like it's something that needs to be discussed and that action needs to be taken, and it's a place we can all come together. We also share resources. We do training. We do events. So like events like this where we teach people about human trafficking. At the same time, they learn self-defense. So resources like that are important. I think the absolute worst thing we can do is not talk about it, is avoid it, is, you know, look elsewhere. So I think that's why it's super important to talk about it.
At what age is there an age limit or for your group, or
No.
Action for Kids? Is there a certain age or?
No, everybody's welcomed.
Everybody?
In our little blurb on our website, we always say that, you know, we want to have stay-at-home moms and dads involved, that we want to have senior citizens stay active, and that we want to provide opportunities for volunteerism to students, so that way they can fulfill those hours that they are asked for. So everyone is welcomed.
That's good. And so what workshops do you guys?
So can I share this one really quick?
Yes.
So this one's coming up on Tuesday.
Okay.
It's Human Trafficking Prevention 101. So people are going to learn about how to spot potential victims, how to kind of protect yourself, what to look out for. And at the same time, they're going to learn self-defense from a jiu-jitsu master. It's for kids 12 and older. And it's on May 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. The only thing is space is limited, so we are asking people to register at our Eventbrite. If you look up Action for Kids, you'll see it pop up. But that's one of the things that we're doing.
Is that something you do regular, or will this be the first one?
Oh, no. The Human Trafficking 101, we always get together like once a year.
Okay.
Before the year begins, way ahead of time. And then we decide what kind of projects we're going to work on. And these are things that come up in the community. Like if we hear that this is something that is needed, then and if it fits into our lane, then we'll go ahead and address it. So for example, the human trafficking, this is going to be the first event that we're doing on it, but we did go into Antelope Valley High School and taught it was the 12th graders that we taught about human trafficking. And mind you that human trafficking, they take them as little as 8 years old and up. I don't think that there is an age, really. But, you know, we did it in the high school. So, but then we also do other different projects. Like, for example, we're going to be having an improv night in the month of June to celebrate good dads.
Okay.
You know, we want to teach dads how to have that levity, you know, how to keep it lively and fun and just have a good time with their family. So we want to teach them about, you know, how to keep it fun. And that all of our events have always been free. You know, we try to find funding here, there, and everywhere in order for us to provide our educational pieces, which are all our events, our educational pieces. We learn something at each one of our events. And that way people can get the information free of charge. But we are hoping that we will have an event soon, maybe our tea event, because we do have a tea in November, which is open for men and women. It's not just, you know, tea for women, but it's for everyone, where we learn about different things. Last year it was about ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, and how to prevent those. And so we have many different events. In April, which is Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Walk, we join Terrific Kids on doing the Dairy on Wheat Walk. But we also kick off the month of April with a stand for kids with signs to welcome all the commuters home with signs of positive messages, so that way we can prevent child abuse that one day at least, you know. And we do it in Lancaster and in Palmdale, like one day in Palmdale, one day in Lancaster. So we welcome everyone to join us and to join our workshops too and our events.
Okay.
And as far as workshops, we have workshops on bullying. As you know, this has become like a huge thing lately.
Right.
There's a lot of bullying going on. And in every one of our events, one of the things that we focus on is the protective factors in order to prevent child abuse. So creating community connections. We also have groups that are community connections in 2 different mobile home parks. And if you guys open the door at your mobile home park, we'll be happy to come out and do our community connection groups at your community. But yeah, so we talk about many different topics. Do you want to talk about the topics, my dear?
Okay, so at the workshops, we talk about eating for health, practicing well-being, managing our money, interviewing like a pro, and then additional tips and tricks, as well as substance abuse prevention.
Okay.
Yeah, so just little things to keep your family well and healthy and happy. So find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Action for Kids, Council for Prevention of Child Abuse, so use those little acronyms. And we're also on Instagram, and we have a website, right? Website. And our website is along with all the other councils. So we don't have one specific just to us, but once you go to that website, then you can go to your specific service planning area, and then you'll find us. And if you live in Pasadena, then you can look up that particular one, and then you'll find them and what they're doing. So we all work together to prevent child abuse, but each one is doing their own thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so we welcome volunteers. Come on over and help us. And just so you know, we are volunteers. Like, none of us get paid for the work that we do. We just do it for the love of protecting children, because it's not their fault that they're here.
Right. No, it's our fault. But I love that. And I thank you ladies for that. So I do want to talk to you about CAP. Applied Positive Psychology. Certified Applied Positive it's Certificate Applied Positive Psychology. Right? I always get that one confused. Anyways, you was a part of the first cohort.
Yes, I was.
I was part of the second class. How did the first, or your class, what's your takeaway from what was your biggest takeaway from the class?
For me specifically, it was psychological safety. I felt that the team at that class, even though there was we started off with 50 people, I think, 60. Yeah. And it got a little bit smaller later because some people dropped off right at the beginning. They couldn't commit to the time that it took to get our certificate. But the people in this class, they were very kind, and they were community-minded. They were just good people. And so we talked about psychological safety, and we said everything that's said in the room stays in the room, and it was easy to find that positivity and that kindness in others. So psychological safety, and when we talk about psychological safety, is about a judgment-free space, right? Where you're there, you can voice your opinions, you can voice your thoughts, and nobody's going to judge you, right? And that's what it was in that particular space. And we took it and we started teaching it in other places too.
So is that what you apply now to what you do with the Kids for Action for Kids? Action for Kids.
No, I mean, we do use some of those methods, right? But and we definitely have to, because we're going into the community and taking applied positive psychology into the high schools. Like, we've been going to Rex Paris, and at Rex Paris, those are the kids that are there to try to finish their credits so they can graduate. And we talk about gratitude, right? After the COVID safer at home orders, to be specific, we learned that there's a lot of people that are now having anxiety going out into public, and that includes the children that are going to school, and they're having a feeling of languish, like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. They're just blah.
Right.
And if you let that go, it can turn into depression. And if you let that depression go, it can turn into a clinical depression, which is a lot harder to treat. And then you're going to need medication. So we don't want people to get there. And that's why we decided that this is what we wanted to do and create community. And the only way that you can create community is if you have the psychological safety. So we taught the kids about that. We talked about savoring. We talked about how that little crinkling of the candy in your hand expands your brain to remember what you studied the night before so you can do better on your tests. And all this information, it's all been proven, studied. So it's not like we're just like making it up as we go. No,
right.
It's been proven. So we talked about savoring. We talked about gratitude. We talked about sending a gratitude message. What else did we talk about? There's 5 things. And jolts of joy. Yes, jolts of joy.
My favorite. I love jolts of joy.
Right? Yeah. So the jolt of joy is something that you do that triggers your endorphins. Mm-hmm. And so you have to find, and then also, and help me, Mike, since you were in the second cohort, what was those little tiny habits? Tiny habits?
Tiny habits, yeah.
Tiny habits. So those are good too, because it helps you to start doing those tiny habits and then utilize them to do something bigger.
Right.
Right? So that you can create better habits. So with the tiny habits, it was about pinning it onto something that you do on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anchoring onto something that you do on a regular basis, like maybe when you turn off your alarm in the morning. So you say, so when I turn off my alarm in the morning, I'm going to do X.
Right.
And then I'm going to give myself like that little jolt of joy by doing Y. Like, for example, when I get up in the morning with my alarm clock, I'm going to turn off the alarm clock. That's your anchor. Then I'm going to go and jump in the pool and give me that little jolt of cold water. And then the way I'm going to savor it is by having my little cup of coffee right after.
Right.
Right? So that helps you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so we did all these things, and the kids were very interactive, right? They helped us out. Another thing that we did is talking about not to take on everybody else's stuff, right?
Yes.
One thing that Miss Sylvia, which was one of the people that joined us that day, is that she brought up a student and said, here, hold on to this book, this paper right here, or this book right here, and put this other book over here. So this is your stuff, and this book is, I don't know, it's your parent stuff, right? He goes, but then here comes your brother and sister stuff, and she puts another book on there. And goes, and then over here you have your pets, and she puts another book on there. Is it getting heavy yet? Mm-hmm. And then over here you have your teacher stuff, and the kids that are bullying your friends. And, so she starts adding more and more stuff, and you're not responsible for the stuff in this other hand. Right. That's not for you to handle. Right. You just need to handle you. And that way you can take off your backpack of all the junk that you're carrying around. And so that was really powerful. And so the kids were like, oh, yeah, that stuff is not mine to carry. Mm-hmm. And sometimes kids don't know that, especially right now when 86% of our people are commuters. Kids are having to raise themselves.
Yeah.
And then these kids that are raising themselves are growing up and having babies. And then it's kind of scary.
Yes, it is scary. I'm glad my kids don't want kids right now. So, yeah.
No, I don't know.
So what's next for Action for Kids?
Well, right around the corner on Tuesday, like we said, Tuesday is our event, the human trafficking event. And then we're still doing our community connection groups in the mobile home parks.
Okay.
We're still doing our comedy night, right? Our improv, teaching the dads or celebrating dads. And then in November, we're having our tea. And hopefully, we're trying to figure out a way so that way we can fundraise. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be really open with you once again. Our annual budget is $3,000 a year. So annual per year, $3,000 to do all the work that we do. That's why we're always partnering with other people, with other organizations, so that way we can pool our funds together and are able to do bigger, better, nicer things, right? So we'd love to partner if you have any thoughts or ideas. And we also need manpower, right? Right now is Mental Health Awareness Month, and there are tons of events going on at the same time. At the end of April, we did, was it 4 things? Yeah, it was 4 things that we did on the 27th, and we have a tiny little team of, very few. I'm not even going to say how many. But yeah, we can use your help. So if you have it in your heart to protect children, to teach parents how to better cope with, the stressors that make us not behave the way we should, then come and join us. We're just, volunteers just like you, moms, dads, aunties, good friends, just coming together to create change for the better and hopefully protect children. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is the statistics that we just recently talked about. So I went to the website where we downloaded the statistics for the sheriff department, that they had all the calls that they went to investigate, right? And our numbers in Palmdale and Lancaster were the highest by far. I think they were double than anybody else's. But one thing that we did take away from that is that that's what we've been trying to do for years. We've been trying to bring to the forefront of people's minds that they need to report, right? If you hear or see a child suffering, call it in, because you might be saving that child's life, right? Call it in. And so, yeah, people have been doing that. We had like the highest numbers. And we noticed, because it's by city, we noticed that another city in LA, where was that city? Compton had 0. Does that make sense to you? No, right? There's no way that there's no child abuse in Compton.
Right.
No way. But it's not being reported.
Exactly.
But I think that comes from that whole mentality, the whole snitching. Like, people don't want to say anything. That they don't see it, but it's right there, and they're not going to say anything.
But imagine, here, those children that are, those people that are getting in trouble, or those kids that are being reported, are getting the help that they need, right? They're getting the psychologist to help them out to deal with their trauma, if there is trauma there. They're getting, the wraparound services. Like if the family needed food and clothing and all that other stuff, then those people are going to get that help that they needed. While the poor little ones in Compton are just being brushed under the carpet.
Right.
Nobody wants to see that, so nobody's going to say anything. But here in Antelope Valley, we know that we have to report. So we're doing a good job with that.
Is there a specific number that they call, or is it just 911?
Oh, no, there's definitely a number. For reporting, it's 1-800, what is it, 1-800-544-4000. 4000, yeah.
Okay.
Or they can go online. I think it's like...
Yeah, and if you call 211, right?
211.
Yeah, you can call 211.
Okay.
You can call CPS, the sheriff.
Yeah,
Okay.
and our, what we like to say is to call 911, right? And let them know that you're reporting that you believe that there might be child abuse going on because you hear this or you see this. Call 911, because they have to give you, and then ask for your report number, right? So that way you have it on record that you've called. So that way the next time that you call, you can still get that number again of you reporting. And then there's no question about the fact that you've called several times and they haven't done anything about it, or that they did do something about it, but at least there's a record.
Right.
So,
And no, it doesn't matter how small you might think it is.
yeah.
They should report it, because those small things can turn into huge things.
I actually get asked that often, like, oh, how do you know when you should report it? And I always tell them, like, if you even have a doubt, just call it in. It's not
Right.
up to you to investigate or,
Right.
you know, let them do their investigating. And if it's nothing, fantastic.
Right.
But
At least you
if it is,
could have
then-
prevented something.
Exactly.
You might prevent something, yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly right.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us today. We're definitely out of time, but I definitely want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work that you both do in the community and all your years and your services.
And thank you for having us here today. And like I said, if whoever's listening, we could use some volunteers.
We're definitely going to do that and put that out there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again. We out, you guys.